guys. I thought today we would do a little bit of a matching activity. Here you'll see I gave you one clock and I've given you two choices to figure out which time matches the clock at the top of your screen. So let's start by looking at this first one together, then we'll see if you can do some by yourself. So let's figure out what this clock says. We start by looking at the shorthand. Remember, the shorthand tells us how many hours have passed. So this shorthand is between 4 and 5. So we know that it's not 5 o'clock yet, but we know that it's after 4 o'clock. It's sometime past 4. And then we remember that we count by fives to figure out how many minutes have passed. And we count starting up at the 12 is 0 minutes. We count by fives until we get to the long hand or the minute hand. So we'll say 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 minutes have passed. So we know it's 4:30. So I would say this is the correct time, and this time is not right. If it was 4 o'clock, think for a minute, where would the two hands be if it was 4 o'clock? The shorthand would point to the 4. Where would the long hand point? If 0 minutes have passed in the 4 o'clock hour, where would that long hand point? It would point right up here at the 12, at the start of the hour. So it's not 4 o'clock if the long hand is not pointing at the 12 and the shorthand is not pointing right at the 4. Let's do another one. Here we have this digital clock that shows 12 o'clock. Which of the analog clocks do you think shows 12 o'clock? Remember, for it to be 12 o'clock, the shorthand needs to be pointing at the 12. And then we see that 0 minutes have passed since the hour started. So the long hand or the minute hand should also be pointing at the 12. 0 minutes have passed. Here's the shorthand. And then right behind it is the long hand. So you see both hands pointing straight up at the 12. That means it's 12 o'clock. So then let's look at this other clock and see why it isn't right. What is the shorthand or the hour hand pointing at? It's pointing at the 6. And the long hand or the minute hand is pointing at the 12. So this clock says what time? 6 o'clock. Remember, we say o'clock when 0 minutes have passed. So this clock says 6 o'clock. It does not say 12 o'clock. So now let's try this one. Think about this clock for just a second. Start by asking yourself, what does the shorthand point at? The hour hand, where is it pointing? It's pointing somewhere between the 1 and the 2. So it's sometime after 1 o'clock. But is it 2 o'clock yet? It's not 2 o'clock yet. So it's 1 something. And then we have to figure out how many minutes have passed. We know we count by fives. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 minutes have passed. So it's 1:30. This one is right. Why can't it be 6 o'clock on this clock? What would have to be different? The shorthand, the hour hand, would have to be pointing at the 6. And this hour hand is not pointing at the 6. What is pointing at the 6? The minute hand is pointing at the 6. And remember, the minute hand tells us how many minutes have passed, not how many hours have passed. So we know that this one is not right. You try this one. Look at the digital clock at the top and then look at the two analog clocks. Can you tell me which analog clock matches the digital clock? Right. This one matches. This clock says 9 o'clock because the shorthand or the hour hand is pointing at the 9. And the minute hand is pointing at the 12, which means 0 minutes have passed. Then let's figure out why this clock can't be right. What's the hour hand pointing at? What is the short hand pointing at? Well, we see that it's between 9 and 10. So we know it's after 9 o'clock, and we were looking for a clock that showed 9 o'clock. So it's 9 something. How many minutes have passed on this clock? 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. So what time would we say this clock is showing? It's showing 9:30. And we were looking for 9 o'clock. Now let's see how we do. Here's another one for you. Which digital clock matches the time on the analog clock? Think about this. Where's the hour hand pointing? And then think about where's the minute hand pointing? Did you say 1 o'clock? That's right. In this clock, the hour hand or the short hand is pointing at the 1. That means it's 1 o'clock. Because the long hand or the minute hand is pointing at the 12, 0 minutes have passed in the 1 o'clock hour. So we know it's 1 o'clock. We know it's not 12 o'clock because the hour hand is pointing at the 1, not pointing at the 12. So we know it's not 12 o'clock. One more. Let's see if you can get this one. It's a challenge for you. We're looking for which analog clock shows the time on the digital clock. The digital clock says 7:30. Which analog clock shows 7:30? See if you can figure it out. Let's see what each of these clocks say and see if your guess was right. Let's start with the one on the left. Where's the hour hand pointing, or the short hand? It's pointing between the 7 and the 8, so I know it's past 7 o'clock, but it's not yet 8 o'clock. So let's figure out what time it is. I know it's 7 something. Let's count and see. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. This clock shows 7:30. Did you say that was the right answer? Let's see about the other clock and see why it can't be the answer. Where's the short hand or the hour hand pointing? It's pointing between the 6 and the 7. So I know it's sometime after 6 o'clock, but is it 7 o'clock yet on this clock? It's not. Let's figure out what time it is. We know the hour is 6. Let's see how many minutes have passed. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. This clock says 6:30, and we were looking for one that says 7:30. So if you picked the one on the left, that's the one that shows 7:30.